English translation 545th contact Monday, the 1st of October 2012, 1703 hours.
Greetings and welcome. It is a pleasure to receive visitors despite the absence of Ptah, Florina, and Njana. But if I may ask who you are and what your name is and what it means? Besides, I do not even know if you understand and speak my Swiss German at all. So do you understand me or not?
My name is Zigapwaden, and I am from Ra. Unfortunately, I could not understand what you said. It was explained to me that you have extensive knowledge of the German language, but I cannot understand what you said, because I do not speak different German dialects, only German in a general way.
Aha, I am sorry. I misspoke because I spoke Swiss German, probably because I am still thinking about the English translation work for the Goblet of the Truth, which Marianne and I are busy with in the kitchen. Obviously you do not speak my mother tongue, as is the case with Ptah, Florina, and Njana. Unfortunately, I did not consider that you have certainly not learned this language, but only a general German, as you call it. Then I would like to say once again that I welcome you warmly, and that it is a great pleasure for me to receive visits from their representatives despite the absence of Ptah, Florina, and Njana. This was not actually planned, at least that is how I understood Ptah's words. And what I went on to say was whether or not you even understood my Swiss German. That has now been clarified. Please excuse my misfortune.
There is no need for that. Besides, I could have addressed you first when you came into this workroom after I had called you.
It could have been yes, but then it was different. So your name is Zawaden, I know that now, but what does that name mean? I would also be interested in your age. And what's important, your pronunciation indicates that you have a very good command of the German language. Is that correct?
I have a very good command of the German language, because I prepared myself to learn it extensively, because I wanted to get to know you, as was also the case with my sister's daughter. You met her on the 2nd of July 2005, because she was allowed to visit you, because she won the merit of visiting you in the search for a name for your mission called Silent Revolution of Truth. Cladena Ikarina told us a lot about her visit to you through our public communication organs, and she also told me a lot and raved about her visit to you. Through Cladena Ikarina's public narratives, several persons were interested in getting to know you. But Ptah and his committee refused to do so, because only absolute exceptions should be allowed, and these should also only be given if they were connected with an activity on Earth. For the reason that I am burdened by a great problem, which I do not dare to entrust to anyone other than you, I applied for an activity on your homeworld, this when I was told that for the time of Florina's and Njana's absence for 3 months, substitute workers would have to take over their activities. Through my application, I gained the possibility that my work could lead me to this planet, and also to you. This was connected with the strict duty to learn all the necessary facts about you, your mission and your faithfulness, as well as about the history of the Earth. The earthly history of mankind up to the present time and the general state of affairs in all things. And since I knew that you have an unusually good command of the German language, and that you are also interested in the study of names, I naturally learned everything to the best of my ability to visit you and to communicate with you in a good way. and to my name is to say that it means he who is loved by gods, and my age I can tell you at 298 years.
Thanks for your information. Ptah told me that I did not know Florina and Enjana's proxy, which was also correct, until now, but he did not say anything about you coming to visit me. But what is with the other person in charge? Because I assume that there are two of you, two men as usual.
What you say? That Ptah has not told you about myself and my visit to you. I know that. Because we decided together that a visit to you during his, Enjana's, and Florina's absence should be a surprise. It is correct that we are two male persons as substitutes, but only I am interested in a conversation with you, because I have some personal questions, if you are willing to give me answers and also good advice.
The surprise is successful. Thanks for that. Of course I want to give you answers to your questions. But how is Ikarina doing? The girl likes to call herself by this name only.
Clatena Karina likes to call herself just Karina, and also wants to be called that, which is indeed her desire. Ikarina has grown into a young woman, and she is very diligent in her efforts to educate herself in various important matters. She asked me to send you many good wishes and greetings, and also to tell you that she embraces you in her thoughts, and that she thinks of you very often. She would like to visit you again, if there is a chance for her to do so.
That is very sweet, very kind, thanks. Also give my best wishes to Ikarina and my best wishes for her life and learning. Ikarina also appears to me again and again in my thoughts, because the girl has made a great impression on me. Despite her young age, she was so very grown up.
I am very happy to convey your words, wishes, and greetings to Ikarina. But as far as what moves me and what I want to discuss with you is concerned, these are really private matters and should also remain so. Ptah has informed me that all conversations with you will be recorded by a control device, and that you will later retrieve and write them down.
Yes, it is indeed so. But when purely private matters are discussed, they also remain private. So I do not write down all conversations that are conducted in this way when I retrieve what was spoken.
Ptah also explained this to me, but I wanted to ask again. May I then put my question straight away?
No problem, of course.
It is a bit embarrassing that at my age but I really need your advice. The whole thing is a bit difficult for me to explain. Excuse me, I do not know where to start.
First of all, you need no inhibitions, so you can speak freely. And you can simply start where the real beginning of what moves you is.
Yes, of course. My concern in relation to my questions is based on...
These are indeed questions with a bit tricky things, but they are all basically based on a single factor. What you said, I understood everything and I heard from everything that, but the question now is whether you are willing to follow what I am trying to explain to you.
Yes, of course I do.
Okay, then I want to explain to you how to proceed and what you can do. In this way, I think everything will work out to your satisfaction and bring you what you want.
What you are explaining makes me very confident and excites me joyfully. So I will follow your advice, and I also express my deep thanks to you. Ikarina has advised me well to present my request to you and ask you for good advice. If I consider your words, everything can only turn out correct if I do everything the way you have explained. It is strange that I have not found this advice for myself.
This is not surprising, for the rule proves that thoughts and feelings cannot be handled logically and controlled correctly when they are deeply influenced and confused by such impulses. Therefore, in such situations, the closest possibilities and opportunities are no longer perceived and a helplessness arises, resulting in worries, sorrow, and problems which can no longer be understood and which cannot be dealt with by oneself, so that they can no longer be mastered. Now, however, I would be very happy if I could hear from you what has come out of my advice, if you have followed it.
It will be a pleasure for me to face you and report on a success, and I am already confident that it will also come to pass. If it is not possible for me to visit you again in person, I will instruct Ptah, Florina, or Injana to inform you accordingly.
Either way, it will be a pleasure for me. But may I ask you something else about the meaning of your name Zawadin, if you know about it?
If I am up onto the answer of the question, then of course, yes.
It's about this. Your name refers to gods, and thus to deities who are individually referred to as God. In what context are these gods to be understood? Respectively, what is their relation to your name? Regarding the meaning of your name, are these gods to be understood as mythical creatures, as you call them in fairy tales as supreme beings, or do they have to be understood as Yeshvish? Ptah once explained that in your Pleiaren, goddesses, or a single god or goddess as the highest mythical creature in fairy tales are attributed a meaning in the sense that a goddess or gods and goddesses are imaginarily given fabulous power over everything and anything. In your fairy tales, these imaginary beings form something like a very wise world-directing omnipotence. Do you know about these things?
You speak a very eloquent and conceptual language, from which I can see that I still have a lot to learn about it. But to answer your question, the Pleiaren name is largely known to me, so I can also answer you according to your question. The meaning of my name, loved by the gods, comes from our traditional understanding of fairy tales, in which truly non-existent female and male beings are conceived as deities with supreme power, who have a benevolent dominion over life and all that exists. On the other hand, there is also a form of god and goddess that was used in ancient times for human beings who were initiated in the degree of an Yeshvish, respectively an Yeshrish, too, whereby the terms god and goddess, however, were only in use for a few millennia and were also used to evaluate name meanings, as was the case with fairy tales, in which the terms god, goddess, and gods and goddesses were used as the highest imaginary mythical creatures for name meanings. However, the name meanings coined in this way very early on, with the correspondingly very old terms god, goddess, gods, and goddesses, have remained unchanged until today. The use of the meanings with regard to the mythical creatures as god or goddess or as gods and goddesses, however, remain purely fairy tale related. While the use of the meaning god or goddess in connection with an Yishvish or an Yishrish is related to reality and represents a great honor and value.
Aha. Then one must always pay attention to whether the meaning of the name is fabulous in relation to mythical creatures, or effective in relation to reality in terms of Jeshvishs and Jeshrishs. And according to the ancient naming system, the terms god, goddess, gods, and goddesses were also brought to earth by the early Lyrans, Wiegans, and Pleiaren, or...
Yes, that is also how I learned it.
So then, with every name you have to consider, in terms of its meaning, whether it has to be evaluated in terms of a Yeshwish, respectively a Jeshrish, or a highest mythical creature. Emmanuel, for example, means the one with divine knowledge. So I understand that divine knowledge is not the knowledge of a mythical creature, a god, but an Yeshvish knowledge, or... If this is so, then the whole of any meaning of the name that contains God. Goddess. Gods or goddesses must be specifically equated according to the meaning of Jeshwish, respectively Jeshrish, or with an imaginary highest mythical creature.
This corresponds to the correct understanding.
Look here in the computer. Ta'a explained the following to me on the 9th of September 2010 at the 503rd contact conversation regarding the same thing. If you can please read it, which I assume you also know the German written language, or...
Of course.
So Wadden reads,
503rd official contact conversation on the 9th of September, 2010.
For us Plejaren, the terms god and goddess have always had the meaning of an imaginary, fantastic fable creature who rules, exercises power, or protects human beings, animals, and plants, or any other things. These are instructive fairy tales, respectively invented and fantastic stories. However, imaginary fable creatures, such as a god or a goddess, are not real in any way, and therefore cannot be equated with a religious god or a religious goddess. Because there are no such religious or other belief-based fantasy figures such as a god or a goddess, but only the creation. The terms god and goddess lead back to the ancient history of our ancestors, to the Lyrans, who also brought these terms god and goddess to earth, together with fables, respectively fairy tales. Many such fables or fairy tales can be traced back to our ancestors as well as to us Plejaren, whereby Earth humans have partly transformed and changed the contents of the stories to earthly things and conditions. But back to the terms god and goddess, which have been used equally in our languages since time immemorial, as is also the case in the German and Swiss German languages. In the German language, the term has found its original form back to God, whereas Earth humans in all languages known to us have transformed the term God into all sorts of other terms and still exist today in more modified forms. In the course of time, these transformed terms gave rise to the names of God as they are used today in all earthly languages. With regard to our traditional terms, God and Goddess, however, the terms God and Goddess have finally emerged again in the course of modern times, especially from the Germanic term Gouda, which was to be understood as a two-gendered term, that is to say in the form of a male and a female god. Before the Germanic term Gouda, the terms Gotu and Godan were common for God, whereby the term Wuden developed from Godan. The two terms were also used by our Lyran ancestors as god and goddess in the same way, as is the case with us. That is to say, as a term for mythical creatures, respectively fantasy creatures, which as an imaginary power stand above all things, but which are in no way equated with the creation. From time immemorial, the peoples whose origins can be traced back to Nocodemian have consciously recognized and regarded universal consciousness as the highest energy and form of power and as the origin of all existence. As a consequence, it never appeared that a god or a goddess would be recognized or appreciated as a universal creative force, respectively as a creator or creatoress. A god or a goddess has always appeared in our fables, respectively in fairy tales, in tearful, satirical, or joyful forms, mainly for children, but adults also enjoy such stories. These fairy tale narratives are fundamentally connected with educational factors, but also with legends and true events, which are embellished in the fairy tale narratives, where often a male or female mythical creature is woven into the story, a god or a goddess. But this never leads to the false doctrine of a God creator or a creator of all things. Because our children are taught at an early age that fairy tales and their characters are only mythical creatures, and that a god or goddess is also only a fictitious creature. This is why it is possible that even small children, as well as older children, can learn in a way appropriate to their thirst for knowledge through fairy tales in which, for example, animals and creatures speak and which are attributed human behavior patterns. Our fairy tales in this respect are designed to contain generally accepted truths about the way of life and behavior of the human beings, which are illustrated as practical wisdom, etc.
This explanation is somewhat different and more detailed than what I have explained. But now I must go again and carry out my duties. It was and is an extraordinary pleasure for me to meet you and to have a conversation with you. It is also a great honor for me that you have helped me with your advice in my matter, for which I express my deepest thanks. It would be a very great honor and pleasure for me if I could visit you again before I am recalled.
It would also be an honor and a pleasure for me if you could visit me again.
It will prove to be true. Then I greet you and leave now.
Thanks for coming. Goodbye.